If you are caught driving under the influence of alcohol, drugs, or prescription medication in the United States, you will face severe legal consequences. Such actions almost always lead to serious personal and criminal repercussions. When an impaired driver causes a crash, especially one involving injuries, the justice system views the offence with little tolerance. In cases where a drunk or drug-impaired driver causes a fatality or life-changing injuries, the charges typically rise to the level of a major felony. Prosecutors may pursue counts such as criminal negligence, reckless endangerment, or causing serious bodily harm. Each case is examined individually, with investigators weighing the specific circumstances and contributing factors. The case of Macy Lathers drew national attention for several reasons. Macy was not only a well-known model and online personality, but also the driver responsible for a catastrophic crash in a popular resort city. The accident claimed the lives of 2 people and left 2 others critically injured. What made the incident even more controversial was Macy's condition at the time of her arrest. She was visibly under the influence, and her erratic behaviour, captured on police body cameras and by bystanders, spread quickly online, fueling public outrage. What began as a tragic road accident escalated into a high-profile case, underscoring the devastating impact of reckless choices and how one person's negligence can destroy innocent lives. Macy Marie Lathers was born on July 16, 2000, in Montgomery County, New York, in the quiet little town of Fort Plain. She grew up as the only daughter in a family with 3 children, and the bond between them was strong and full of love. Her parents lived modestly, working hard to provide stability and opportunities for their children. The family home sat near the Mohawk River, surrounded by calm and scenic views. In Fort Plain, a town of fewer than 2,000 residents, life moved slowly, and the crime rate was among the lowest in the country. Everyone knew one another, and news travelled fast. Macy's upbringing reflected that sheltered environment, where most of her time was spent close to home under the watchful eye of her family. Academically, she excelled. Bright, motivated, and disciplined, Macy consistently ranked at the top of her class. She was also active in athletics, particularly gymnastics and track and field, though she never pursued sports as a long-term career. During her teenage years, she blossomed into a striking young woman. Admirers often sought her attention, with whispers that some even competed for it. Still, she never allowed social life to distract her from her goals. Teachers described her as intelligent, focused, and committed to excellence. Her hard work paid off when she graduated as valedictorian and was accepted into the State University of New York at Albany, where she majored in communications and languages. Rather than live on campus, Macy chose to remain at home, just an hour's drive away, staying close to her parents and siblings. For her, Albany felt like an entirely new world. As the state's bustling capital, it contrasted sharply with the small, slow rhythm of Fort Plain. For Macy, the city promised excitement, opportunities, and experiences beyond anything she had ever known. Macy quickly made friends and stood out in her group of friends thanks to her charm, intelligence, and beautiful looks. She kept doing well in school and quickly became one of the best students in her class.
She and her new friends also started going to bars, clubs, and other places to have fun at night all over the city. With this new way of life, Macy quickly got used to it. The days were spent in classes and libraries, and the nights were often spent going out late at night in the city. Macy always showed up to class, passed her tests with flying colours, and looked put together, even though she had more and more plans with friends. As is common in many college nightlife settings, a lot of alcohol was drunk. Over time, Macy started drinking more often. What started out as a social drink slowly turned into a daily habit. Still, her young, healthy body seemed to be able to handle the way she lived well. She continued to do very well in school, and her teachers continued to compliment her intelligence and creativity. At home, her family didn't notice anything unusual about the way she behaved or lived. That being said, Macy chose to move out of her family's house during her junior year and into an apartment near the university that wasn't on campus. She shared the space with a group of her girlfriends, which was a big change in her life as she became more independent. At about this point, Macy started to try a wider range of strong, mood-altering drugs more often. She usually got these illegal items from places where people go out at night and often ate them there. She didn't think it was a problem that she was using more and more. She believed she could stop at any time. Macy had fully embraced the party life by the time she graduated from college. It was normal for her to go to nightclubs, dance, and be around alcohol and other illegal items all the time. In spite of everything, she finished her degree, successfully defended her thesis, and got her diploma. However, she knew even back then that she didn't want to work in a stuffy office her whole life. Macy became an adult during a huge rise in the use of social media sites around the world. It's no surprise that she made accounts on a lot of popular sites while she was still in high school. At that time, she lived in the small, quiet town of Fort Plain and had only a few dozen followers, most of whom were people she knew. She posted pictures of her family or beautiful scenery from time to time, but she didn't really care how many likes or followers she had. Now that Macy lives in the city, things have changed a lot. Her parents gave her a fancy white Mercedes-Benz for her 18th birthday. It was something she had wanted for a long time. Additionally, they continued to give her money, which let Macy live a carefree social life and post a lot about it on her social media accounts. Macy quickly became popular online thanks to her beautiful looks, lively personality, and active lifestyle. Her social feeds showed that she was always having fun, going to parties, and looking glamorous. The number of people who followed her went through the roof, and soon she had a loyal following that made her a local star. Macy knew she wouldn't be going for a traditional career in her chosen field by the time she was in her last years of college. What really interested her was how to turn her love of having fun into a way to make money. She started taking dance classes and sent her modeling portfolio to different agencies in the hopes that someone would notice her and offer her a good job. Macy wasn't able to break into any major modeling circles, even though she was pretty, slim, and had a lot of charm. But her popularity kept going through the roof online. She talked about her success and lived a glamorous life. For small fees, she would sometimes promote products or services on her platforms. Macy told her parents that she was going to move to sunny Florida and live in Miami after she graduated. As well as looking for modeling jobs, her goal was to work as a hostess at one of the city's cool nightclubs. Her parents were, of course, shocked and disappointed by her choice. She had always been a good student and showed a lot of promise. Plus, she had just finished her degree at a well-known university. It looked like she was leaving all of that behind now. Why? It wasn't like they tried to force her to change her mind, though. In fact, they kept helping her by sending her money on a regular basis to cover her costs. Macy moved to Miami at the beginning of 2023. She got a small flat to rent and started looking for work. At the same time, she went out and enjoyed the city's nightlife in the hopes of making useful connections. She became a regular in the scene very quickly. She was back to living the party life and had no plans to slow down. Lathers had had many different roles in the nightlife and entertainment scene over the years. As a model for ads, a dancer, and even a ring girl at combat sports events, she wore skimpy clothes and stepped onto the mat to show the crowd the round numbers. During this time, she became better known to the public. She was in the local news a few times, and she was even asked to do a few interviews. A lot of people were following Macy on social media by the spring of 2024. She changed her name and started promoting fitness gear, supplements, and beauty products as a fitness influencer. Behind the carefully curated image, though, her real life was anything but the clean and healthy image she showed online. She went to parties and nightclubs often, and often drank strong alcoholic drinks. She was also open to trying new illegal drugs that were available in those places. This pattern of behavior caught up with her over time, both in her personal life and in court. At one point, Lathers was caught driving while drunk, and her license was temporarily taken away. But she broke the law again, and this time, her license was taken away for good. That didn't change her mind, though. Around 6 a.m. on August 10th, 2024, the streets of Miami, which are usually very busy, were surprisingly quiet. The silence was broken all of a sudden by the screech of brakes and the sound of several loud impacts. 3 cars were involved in a major accident at an intersection. People nearby rushed to help a black Range Rover that had been hit hard on the driver's side. The driver was awake and aware, but his face was bloody. People who saw the accident carefully helped him get out of the wreck. He had hit his head and broken ribs, and he could hardly stand up. While they waited for emergency workers, kind people gave first aid and did their best to stop the bleeding. The second car was a Suzuki minivan, and it was damaged even more badly. The frame was bent, and the doors were stuck shut. There were 3 people inside, a middle-aged woman driving, a man in the front passenger seat, and a second man in the back. All 3 were hurt very badly. Both the driver and the passenger in the back seat were not moving, and the person in the front seat looked like they were shocked. Rescuers didn't pull them out through the windows because there wasn't an immediate fire risk, and they were afraid it could make any head or spinal injuries worse. The third car, a white Mercedes-Benz, was not badly hurt. It had gone off the road and hit a curb before lightly clipping the other 2 cars. When people who were there saw it, it was empty. The driver wasn't to be seen, and the pale leather interior didn't show any signs of damage, like blood, or a fight. Of course, the driver had left the scene of the accident on their own, either not hurt at all, or with only minor cuts. As soon as possible, witnesses spoke up. A young woman was seen leaving the Mercedes-Benz right after the crash by several people. She carefully got out of the car from the driver's side, trying not to draw attention to herself. Her clothes were blue jeans and a hoodie that was too big on her. The hood was pulled low over her face. It was very quiet early in the morning when she crossed the street and quickly walked away from the scene. The young woman, who has not been named, tried to blend in by running with a group of early morning runners who were passing nearby. She got away without being seen because no one tried to stop her. No one in the crowd could give a clear description of how she looked. When the police, medics, first responders, and rescue crews got there, their first job was to free the hurt people who were inside the damaged cars. The man in the front passenger seat of the minivan wasn't moving at that point. Later, medical examiners found that he had suffered serious injuries to his head and insides, with massive internal bleeding being the main cause of his death. It was very important that both the woman driving the minivan and the man in the back seat get to the hospital quickly. It was hard for the doctors to save their lives. The Range Rover driver was also taken to the hospital with minor injuries. His life wasn't in danger right away, but he had a serious head injury, and one of his lungs was hurt. Investigators talked to witnesses and found that the driver of the third car, who they think caused the accident, was a young woman who ran away from the scene. Luckily, there were several surveillance cameras set up at the intersection where the accident happened, and investigators quickly started gathering and analyzing the footage. It was easy to see on the video that a white Mercedes-Benz was speeding through the intersection even though the light was red. The other two cars were going the right speed and should have gone first. The minivan driver seemed to try to avoid the accident by swerving at the last second, but her car still hit the Mercedes. She then hit the Range Rover with her car and then crashed into a utility pole. The video showed that the woman in the Mercedes didn't seem to be seriously hurt. When she got out of the car, she pulled her hoodie tight over her face and tried to blend in with the joggers. After that, she went off into a nearby park, but there were no cameras there, so the trail went cold. Who drove the white Mercedes-Benz that no one knew about? What made her run away? And where did she go? No one who saw her could give a clear description or say for sure where she had gone. The vehicle registration helped the police find the owner, but the woman in question showed up in the strangest way before they could finish their investigation. As the police continued to look at the video and talk to witnesses, an odd call came into emergency services. A construction worker who was just a few blocks away from the crash site told police about a young woman who was very lost. The caller said the woman had tried to flag down cars at first by acting erratically and dangerously, running into traffic and throwing herself at cars going by. Suddenly, she started taking off her clothes. She took off her hoodie and then a small top, leaving her in jeans and no clothes above the waist. She began yelling bad words and spinning in circles in the middle of the road, trying to get into random cars by pulling on their door handles. She finally laid down on the road and rolled around on the asphalt. The person who saw what happened and called the police rushed to help her. He tried to pull her to the sidewalk, but she was surprisingly strong and kept getting away while yelling things he couldn't understand. When he realized he couldn't move her, he stood nearby and directed traffic so cars wouldn't hit her. He stayed with her until the police showed up. When police arrived, the first thing they did was put their arms around the half-dressed woman and try to ask her some simple questions to figure out who she was. But she didn't seem to be connected to anything real. She sometimes muttered things that didn't make sense, and then screamed, clearly high on something. She was so excited about aliens that she couldn't even say her own name. She was shouting that they were coming and would be there soon. Then all of a sudden, she calmed down and said she was from the future, had a magical orb, and could travel through time. She paused for a moment and then said, "I remember dying." It was clear that it would be very hard to do a proper interview in these conditions. Her speech was a mix of false beliefs and hallucinations. Then, out of the blue, she asked if anyone had seen her white Mercedes-Benz and said she was afraid aliens might have taken it. They no longer had any doubts at that point. Without a doubt, it was the same woman who had left the scene of the accident. She said over and over that she was from the future. Then she sat down on the asphalt and started talking to someone who wasn't there, as if she were talking to her mother. "Mum, I'm leaving now. Do not cry. I can go back in time." She said, "I'll come see you." She then looked around and asked where her car was, and then she turned back to her invisible friend. The so-called visitor from the future was able to remember her name, Macy, by the time the paramedics got there to help her. But besides that, her condition didn't change. She was having vivid hallucinations and talking in jumbled, crazy thoughts. The medical team thought she had taken a dangerous mix of strong alcohol and strong psychoactive drugs based on how she was acting. To properly treat her, they had to find out what she had taken so they could give her the right medicine to counteract the effects of the drug. Macy's condition changed quickly. She seemed to be able to understand what was going on around her at times. But then, she would start talking about aliens and time portals. When asked straight out what she had taken, she couldn't say. She didn't even seem to get the question. Then all of a sudden, she put her fingers together like she was throwing glitter and whispered, "Pink, pink, pink powder." It sounded like more nonsense, but one of the medics knew right away what it meant. She probably meant a strong drug called pink cocaine, which is a man-made mix of different chemicals that make you feel high. The risk with this mix is that it is hard to keep track of. There isn't a standard recipe, and the balance of ingredients changes with each batch. This means that the effects can range from mild happiness to strong hallucinations or even death from an overdose. People in the club scene really liked it because it looked cool and didn't cost much. For a stylish, glitzy look, the signature pink color was sometimes made with food dye and food coloring mixed together. The toxicology test done at the hospital confirmed the main substance in her body, which let doctors give her the right IV treatment to get rid of it. At the same time, police identified the woman as 24-year-old Macy Lathers, who is a pretty well-known social media influencer, online personality, and regular in Miami's nightlife scene. 3 cars, including Macy Lathers' white Mercedes-Benz, were involved in the accident she caused. 4 people were hurt very badly. Juanita and Abraham Molina, who were married, were in the minivan with their friend Jesus Rubio, who was sitting in the back. Abraham, who was sitting next to his wife in the front passenger seat, sadly did not make it. He died from his wounds before emergency workers could get to the scene. Jesus, who was in the back seat, was badly hurt and was rushed to the closest hospital in critical condition. It took days of hard work by doctors to save his life, but he finally died without ever waking up. Juanita miraculously lived through the accident, but the injuries she got left her paralyzed for life. She needs a wheelchair now. The couple's school-age son lost his father right away, and his mother is still in the hospital, so she can't take care of him every day. When Jesus Rubio died, he left behind 2 children and the sole source of income for his family. They are now grieving and having a hard time paying their bills. The Range Rover driver was hurt less badly than the others, but he or she still had to have several surgeries and a long recovery process. He still can't go back to his old job or way of life. Macy, on the other hand, got away from the crash without any obvious injuries and tried to run away. It turned out that she had been caught driving drunk a few months before and had her license taken away immediately. Because she had committed a second offense, she was no longer allowed to drive. Of course, that didn't stop her from drinking and using illegal drugs, and then getting behind the wheel until it all ended in a terrible accident that killed 2. Macy Lathers is now being charged with several crimes, including driving while drunk or without a license, vehicular manslaughter, causing serious bodily injury through negligence, and leaving the scene of an accident. She was arrested and told she couldn't go free. Her bail was set at $150,000. She is still in jail while she waits for her trial because she can't get that much money from anyone, not even family. Even though surveillance footage and eyewitness accounts strongly suggest that Macy was at fault for the accident, Her lawyer has said that she should only be punished for driving while drunk and not having a valid license. He says that the rest of it happened while she was having severe hallucinations that made her unable to understand what she was doing. He said that the real culprits are the ones who made and sold the strong synthetic cocktail that Macy drank. The prosecution has a different view. They point to video evidence that shows Macy acting normally right up.
That's it for today. If you found it thought-provoking, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and as always, stay safe, stay smart, and keep seeking the truth.